The tempos by Beethoven are perfect. You just have to practice. Ladies and gentlemen, something that is more and more difficult for me to tolerate is hearing or reading musicians that should know better speaking about their Beethoven performances, their Chopin performances, what have you. And every time people raise the topic of metronome marks in interviews or in CD boxes or wherever, they say like, metronome marks, problematic? No. Of course not. I've been studying this for so many years and there is no problem at all. It's annoying because they should know better. In fact, the book that we're going to publish will have an entire chapter where we collected like these rare moments where all of these great names and lesser known names actually talk honestly about what is really problematic. And surprise, surprise, then the metronome marks suddenly become problematic. Why is it so hard for me to tolerate that? Because it poisons the discussion. It poisons not even the discussion, the conversation, the solution, like coming closer to that idea of Beethoven, Chopin, all the other composers in the 19th century. And the only window through which, or the only door, if you wish, to which we can still access parts of that is by reconstructing the tempo. Changing the tempo changes everything. It's not just me saying that, it's just a fact. That's, by the way, also the reason why these conductors and these musicians have so much trouble in just leaving the idea that their space shuttle tempi for all these works actually is historically, by definition almost, factually, certainly not correct. And for the love of God, I don't know what is so hard in just addressing the issue. So today we're going to talk about this guy, which is, I have a hard time saying still is, because like what we are going to read, this was a hero for me. Like I own his version of the Monteverdi Vespers. It's a CD, one of my first CDs. I listened to that maybe 100 or 150 times, if not more. It's just brilliant. The guy has a vision. He knows what music is. And then Jordi Savall brings all the 9 symphonies to Vienna. And so he basically is saying, like, if he prepared 5 years for that, and with his orchestra, he's coming to play all these symphonies now in Vienna. Okay, fine. Let's read through this, and then we're going to fact check some things, because there is a lot we can say about this. So, mehr als 5 Jahren hat sein Großprojekt vorbereitet. Nun präsentiert Jordi Savall 83 in Wiener Konzerthaus mit seinem Orchester, and so on. So he prepared more than 5 years this cycle of the 9 symphonies, and now he's ready to play all of the 9 symphonies in die concert hall in Vienna. Ziel ist gewesen, in die gleiche Emotion wie damals zu kommen. So the goal is really to come in the same emotion as people had back in the time, and zu spüren, was an Beethovens Musik so neu war. So to try out and to find, what was so new to the music. And what I mean by that, what Savall means by this is like, I'm going to reconstruct the performances of these symphonies that you've never heard before. And while you've never heard this before, we can actually guarantee you that when you come to these performances, you will hear something that people in those days actually also heard for the first time. Then he says something really shocking. So he went to the manuscripts and he analyzed everything. He also studied the original tempo markings. Beim Hören bisherigen Aufnahmen sei schockiert gewesen, dass fast kein Dirigent das originale Metronom respektiert hat. This is quite a statement. So he says, when I listen to recordings that have been made until now, I'm shocked. Why? Because no conductor respect the original metronome marks. Now, what I would find shocking, and that's the thing that I cannot tolerate, or have a harder and harder time to tolerate that, is when people claim they're doing that, but then you check and they actually do not follow the metronome marks. But here, Savall is saying it himself. I'm shocked. Nobody actually pays attention or respects the original metronome markings. He's right in that. But is he going to do that? That's the question. It's an interesting statement because the bar is here for him now. Eh? And I should add to that, what's the solution then? And now we're coming to the crux. Die Tempi von Beethoven sind perfekt. Man muss einfach genau arbeiten. So the tempos by Beethoven are perfect. You just have to practice. So let's do the exercise, right? Here is his Ninth Symphony. It's a performance from it's January 2020, 22, so 3 years ago. And we're going to compare some parts with our recording. By the way, this is our Bandcamp page. If you've never visited that, I recommend that because you can listen to these recordings that we publish there, and more will be published 3 times, and then Bandcamp will ask you for some money, which is just normal, right? We worked also 4 years on the symphonies, only the recordings, but without any subsidies and without any other income than just our own work, because we believe in what we do. So here's the 9 symphonies here on Bandcamp. You can listen to that, and we have also the 9th symphony. So what we're going to focus on now first. So this is the opening of Beethoven's 9th symphony, first movement, Allegro ma non troppo e poco maestoso. If we scroll further, we see here the string section, and the first violins have these 30-second notes. Ta-dam, ti-dam, and then it goes further towards the bass. We made that exercise before with the recording by Gardner. Listen to how these 30-second notes are played. I'm first going to share our own recording so that you hear what the tempo in whole beat is. Just compare that later with Savall. Okay, keep that in mind. Those are not 30-second notes. And every orchestra does it in the same way. Okay, let's continue here, our performance. And that continues. So Savall is playing 16th notes. And by the way, Beethoven marks 88 quarter note. You can check our recording. That will be spot on 88. Savall is not playing in 88. He's starting in 82. And now you can say like, yeah, but that's just 6 beats on the metronome. Well, that's a lot. That's a lot for a guy who says like, I'm shocked that no other performance is ever done of the Beethoven symphonies respecting. Now, it's not even the fastest performance. If I'm not mistaken, that Gardner is faster. So now, first piece of homework to Savall in Vienna. And by the way, as a conductor, the only thing you have to do is tell your orchestra to go faster. I mean, don't pretend that you have to practice so much, right? It's very easy to say. We just have to practice more. Well, waving your baton in 88 is not harder than in 82, right? The poor musicians in the orchestra, they have to practice more, and they have to actually do the impossible. I wonder, well, when the first orchestra is going to refuse to play under such conductors. I've heard stories by people, by orchestra members, like how, can I say arrogant? I'm not saying in this case, I don't know Savall personally, but how arrogant and also sometimes brutal conductors can be, like pushing their members of an orchestra to go over their limits. And like, and you can say, like, what conductor, what is he doing? He's just holding the group together and gives the tempo. Never understood that. Why musicians actually, I mean, they probably have no choice, but I wonder when an orchestra will stand up and say like, enough is enough. We don't do that anymore. You, Mr. Gambist, you go here and you play the cello parts of the symphony yourself and you demonstrate that you can do it. Anyways, we move on to the Scherzo. This is an interesting part. Why? Because there you have a section where Beethoven is actually speeding up. He's going from 3/4 at the beginning to a 4/4 section in the middle. And what's interesting about that, he wants to keep the bar equals to bar. And so we have 116 at the beginning, for the complete bar. We go to 116 to the complete bar in the middle section, and that's Scherzo. And it's not really a trio, it's a middle section. And so orchestra struggle with that because 116, and Savall is very close to 116, is a tempo that orchestras can reach. I'm going to show you what the result is. We have to keep in mind, just talking about notation, this is an eighth note notation. I don't know if it really reflects an eighth note feeling for you, but anyways. In the middle section comes this passage where he goes to whole bar equals whole bar, and there is a passage of 4 bars where Beethoven says stringendo. So you have to speed up in order to like accelerate, in order to make this like kind of ecstatic feeling. It's like coming in an open field suddenly. It's an unbelievably beautifully written passage. So let's see what Savall is doing here. So, to his credit, he is speeding up. Many orchestras, even Gardner and also Herwegen, they will just keep the quarter note to the quarter note, but it's not what Beethoven wants. So Beethoven wants you to speed up 25%, so to arrive in 116 for the whole bar. This is pretty fast. But what is his tempo now? It's not 116. It's 90. That's really a lot slower. In fact, that's almost 25% slower than actually he claims that Beethoven has to be played. And so let's just speed it up here for the sake of letting you experience what single beat here would be about. I mean, yeah, I know that some people will say like, yeah, but it's just, you have to accept that. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, the fact is, and that's just the only point I want to make here, there is no single beat performance here. So Mr. Savall should practice a little bit more. He has till June, I think, to accomplish what he is actually wishing for himself. Then we go to the Adagio. And now the Adagio is, we're not gonna listen to that, but the Adagio, Jordi Savall plays that in 11 minutes, 53 seconds. And if you would go to our version on Bandcamp, you would discover that our performance is 19 minutes and 30 seconds. So 19 versus 12, 7 minutes and a little bit of difference. But this movement is very special for a certain reason. You remember that beautiful document about durations that I commented on, and I'm of course hiding the facts, and I'm not saying the truth and whatever. I mean, so be it. Here's Mr. Berlioz, the composer, saying about Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, this Adagio, it takes almost 18 minutes. Savall is 12, we are 19. Just saying also that durations point so clearly in single beat. No, they don't. Not going to make this video into a durations video. Anyways, we go now to the last movement, and this is the biggest shock. The opening of the finale, we have 2 metronome marks. We have 66 and we have 96. Now, Martin Noortuin, who did a promotion on Beethoven's tempo indications, he claims that 96 is actually the most probable metronome mark. But I mean, that is like, nobody's even coming close. 96 is on paper possible. If you just list, if you would go to our notation course, that's part of the full Beethoven experience, you would see that 96 in the tables that I made. Noortuin is right. It's very possible. 96, 66, there's a range, there's a fork, of course, but 96 is incredibly fast. And 66 is the other metronome mark that I think is correct. Can have a dispute on that, but it's not too important. I have my reasons to believe that, but anyways, that's for another time. But 66 is a tempo that most conductors don't get to. Like, we will hear the opening here, and I have to look at my notes. Savall plays them in 56. Not even the slowest of the two metronome marks we have, 66, but 56. But after that, after the introduction, we arrive at what will become eventually the very famous baritone solo. Actually, Beethoven gives like the introduction of all the themes that are going to happen, and the baritone will start with what the orchestra now introduced, actually the cellos. And Beethoven writes here, selon le caractère d'un récitatif, mais in tempo. So according to the character of a recitativo, but in tempo. So strictly in tempo. There is no, I mean, the tempo just should go on. I will share with you first our version here on Bandcamp, and then we listen to Savall, and there is something shocking there. In the light of what he said, now let's see what Savall does. That's exactly the same tempo as we took in our recording, but we played in whole beat. So this is, according to Savall's own words, this is 50% too slow. And so are you saying to me that it is by accident? That he didn't know about this? That he didn't practice enough? That there was not a moment in the preparation of this recording in which he said like, it's not going to work, because guess what? Later, it's not a cello anymore. It's a real singer. And aren't people saying that when you sing in whole beat, singers will suffocate? First of all, that's not happened. It didn't happen with our recording. They're still fine. But the other remark we got is like, hey, finally, we can breathe. And we can articulate the words. Actually, we can have a debate. We can talk about how the pronunciation of those words should happen in the German of that time. While if you go much faster, it's impossible. And so, could it be that there was like a reflection back and forth with the tenor of the baritone, who was not the tenor, with the baritone, who sang the introduction, saying like, "Hey, Mr. Savall, but it's not going to work. We have to slow down." And by the way, everybody is doing that. So nobody will actually take notice because we're used to that. In fact, the opposite is true. When you would speed it up, the audience would be shocked because it's one of the most iconic moments in history of music. So let's keep it, for those reasons, at a lower tempo. And surprise, surprise, they play whole beat. Let's check when our singer enters the scene. So, and now Savall.
O Freunde, nicht diese Töne. Sondern lasst uns angenehmere anstimmen.
It's unbelievable, right? Just continue here. Even we play the chords a little faster. I mean, it's becoming a joke, right? And then just finally here, I mean, at the end, I was listening to that and I said, like, I have to share that with you because Imagine you would have never heard this before. What would be your impression? But also, so many people complain about the lack of interest of a younger audience, of new audiences to classical music. But what do you imagine that they hear when you listen like something like this? Like we say, hey, Beethoven is the greatest composer of all time, and you should listen to that. Well, I don't think that people who come from other styles of music, like pop music or modern music or whatever, and they listen to this, that they would agree that Beethoven is the greatest composer of all time. This is just fanfare music. It's silly beyond, whatever. Just listen. You know what it reminds me of? I was just listening now again, and I was, like you're sitting in a restaurant, and it's the best chef cook you can imagine. It's Beethoven, his name. And he prepares the most delicious dishes. But you have like the guy who, how do you say that? The guy who's serving you, bringing the dishes and everything. And before you even have one piece of that meat in your mouth, he comes with the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So you have no time to just taste your food. That's the impression you have here. Like this moment, there is an incredible modulation, like it's unbelievable. But like it's a timeline, eh? So Beethoven knows when he has to give that. But if you go, you don't hear it. There's dish after dish after dish after dish, give it away. I mean, unbelievable. And nobody in that room stands up and say like, guys, this is a joke. It's like the emperor without clothes. You're naked. And you play too slow. But in this case, it annoys me like more than I can say. Does he know there is a problem? Let me rephrase it differently. If Savall doesn't know there is a problem after 5 years of studying and he still makes that claim, then for the love of God, make place for someone else and stop using your authority to be there in the center of what we're supposedly still call historically informed performance practice. It requires some academic, at least attitude. But if you're working 5 years on these symphonies and you don't have a clue that when you make the claim that there is no problem, just practice more, and you yourself makes it so easy. Make it so easy for a simple musician like I am to say like here, it doesn't make any sense. Then either you know that you're saying something that is not correct, and that is really, really terrible. That's intellectually dishonesty of the highest level, because you block an entire generation, maybe more, for finding the truth in this. But if you don't know that, then why are you there? Then you do not belong to the scenery of historically informed performance practice. We can all be wrong. We make mistakes. I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But when you make a claim like this, which is so easy to factually know that it's not possible, and I have less and less patience with these people. And Savall is not alone, eh? They all make the same claims. Why? Ask them that. Next time you're in a concert like this, we should find people who are just brave enough to stand up and say like, hey, I checked your metronome mark, it's too slow. And you said in the article you're going to serve us Beethoven as we've never heard before. I want my money back. I mean, of course, don't do it. You get my point. Anyways, sorry for the long rant, but it was necessary. If you made it so far in the video, leave it in the comments. I appreciate that very much. And before we leave, as always, same drill, like and subscribe to the channel. I want to grow to 100,000, which is super, super difficult for a channel like us. Sometimes I make a video and we gain 100 subscribers. And a video that I think like it's a very specific topic, nobody's going to care, 10,000 views in a week. Then I make a video on the waltz and YouTube says, no, I don't like it. It's unbelievable. And we gain 1 subscriber. So I have no clue after being 10 years on YouTube, like how this thing really works. But if you're still here, subscribe to the channel and check out our Patreon site. I love all my patrons because they make it possible that I spend here time on a Friday afternoon making this video for you. Hopefully to make you aware that music in the past was much different. And that if you just give it a little bit of time, listen to our symphonies on Bandcamp 3 times for free, you won't regret it, and you won't be able to go back, because that's uncovering so many layers that Beethoven put in the symphonies that are now so compressed. Anyways, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for watching. We see each other very soon. Again, bye.